1931, the history of Manchuria would drastically change. Following the Mukden incident, the Kwantung army of the Empire of Japan invaded the region, establishing the puppet state of Manchukuo. In 1934, it was declared a constitutional monarchy under Aisin Gyoro Puyi, the final emperor of China. But functionally not much changed. The Japanese and their puppet leaders still remains in control, with the Kwantung army continuing to dominate the region. This has sparked massive problems of legitimacy, as the population has yet to accept the Japanese invasion and the supposed rule by the emperor, which in turn has sparked mass banditry in the countryside, with the region much like the Wild West of America. It ranges anywhere from non-ideological bandits to freedom fighter guerrillas. The Kwantung army and the puppet regime are of course trying to fight and pacify the countryside, but with little support from mainland Japan for these operations, not many saw success. Still, in the big cities, where at least some semblance of stability exists, economic development by the government continues. Studying foreign industrial techniques and inviting foreign investors, mostly from Japan, we can double our economic output. The biggest parts of these investments were put into our textile industry, the cornerstone of our industrial output, which through its exports to Japan bring in the most foreign capital. Still, on the countryside, the banditry has gotten worse and worse, and important infrastructure is even being attacked. Growing more and more disillusioned, even parts of the Concordia Association, which sheds the ruling government, are starting to become more assertive towards the Japanese and the Kwantung army. Through negotiations, we've gained a more favorable puppetry, sending less of our industrial output to Tokyo, and the government has forced the Kwantung army to return control of the railways to ourselves after their failures at protecting them. But while the pro-Japanese majority of the government simply saw this as a way to strengthen Manchuria to further aid the Japanese efforts in China, this type of resistance has invigorated those less favorable to the Japanese and opened up for discussion that previously would have been impossible. Unbeknownst to Japan and the leadership in Chongqing, a veritable resistance movement is growing in strength. This mysterious coalition reflects the realities of our land, united under 5 people: Russians, Mongolians, Koreans, Manchus, and even some fringe Japanese communists support it. For example, white Russians who went into exile after the Russian Civil War are helping out the movement. While you might expect it to be centered around Puyi, he is mostly seen as an incompetent Japanese puppet and is widely criticized, as most parts of the freedom movement wish to see his riddance. But he, and most certainly not the Japanese, will just leave because we ask them to. On the horizon there lies a massive war of independence, an armed struggle against the Kwantung army and by extension the very competent Imperial Japanese army. Though remember, this war has already started, with the bandits at the forefront of the fight. So by allying and recruiting them, we will be able to coordinate a much clearer strategy of independence. As the preparations began for real, a massive event changing everything took place. The Japanese declared war on the Kuomintang and their Chinese United Front, using the Manchurian holdings as a staging ground. This is where the Manchukuo government would inadvertently continue to support our movement, as they decided to join the invasion, further angering the local population. This also means that while the Kwantung army is fighting in China, we can continue building up our forces and gain control of the army back home that remains rested and prepared for independence. Continuing to strengthen contact with the bandits, our rebel army has reached the size of 200,000 men, but remains too unequipped for war at this point. While most weaponry will come from local production, our bandit allies are also seizing a bunch of transports through our railway networks to the war in China, which both weakens the Japanese and strengthens us. While most of our reach was inside of Manchuria, we've also gained contact with the IMPRP, operating in the Mongol military government, coordinating with them to rise up at the same time as we do. 1.5 years later, we've seen important progress. Our army stands fully equipped and expanded to 35,000 men, with 24 divisions being our all-right cavalry divisions. Having also continued to quietly defeat the Japanese garrisons, there is nothing left until we declare independence and begin a new dawn for Manchuria. The Second Sino-Japanese War has also developed in our favor, having spread along the coast all the way south to Guangdong. The majority of the Imperial Japanese army is far away from our lands, leaving Korea and Beijing as vulnerable targets. Having also taken substantial casualties already, there is a chance us switching sides could overstretch their army, allowing for a swift expulsion of the main continent, which is probably what's needed for a lasting peace. But the reality will most definitely look far bloodier. June 23rd, the Independence War began. Our forces, led by Ma Zhanshan, seized control of Shinkin, announcing our independence and therefore switching sides in the Sino-Japanese War. Starting immediately by marching into East Hebei and Darien, we will secure the areas thanks to the element of surprise. But the most important area is Korea, and it too lies completely open. So starting to ride down south, we would secure the whole north part of the territory without meeting a single enemy division. It was only as we reached Seoul that we engaged in combat. Though this small garrison was obviously unable to cover the entire width of the peninsula, allowing us to bypass and eventually encircle the city. Still, it had bought enough time for reinforcements, and for the first time we started meeting actual resistance. Thankfully, arriving quite disorganized, we could continue riding around them, especially since our forces are more mobile. It would end with us creating 4 pockets, only one of which the Japanese could supply through the port of Fusan. Obviously this would be the last one to fall, but fall it would, and so we've secured all of Korea, and already caused 100,000 casualties to our old overlords. But the war is far from over. In the west, we were unable to capitalize on the Menjiang uprising, with the Japanese reinforcements already beating back our weaker forces. And just about as we captured Fusan, 4 divisions in the Imperial Japanese Army are attempting to naval invade Dairen. We will immediately send our Korean forces to both these fronts, but with the prospect of more naval invasions, many need to remain protecting the peninsula, at least until we've trained more stationary infantry units. Dealing first with the naval invasion, with the reinforcements arriving, we were able to safely lure the Japanese onto the beaches only to close the trap and defeat 2 divisions almost for free. But looking to our only front left, things are looking even worse than before. They have penetrated into our lands and we are suffering from supply troubles in the most western areas. While sending the cavalry to the north, we simultaneously conducted an organized withdrawal of some of the most undersupplied areas in the west. But surprisingly also finding an easy offensive which allowed us to encircle 1 division and recapture Tangshan. With the northern front stabilized and after reorganizing our front lines to have our strongest unit in the southwest, we stand ready with a 16 division cavalry army to begin our Chinese campaign. Outnumbering the Japanese Imperial Army, we easily broke through in Tongzhou and liberated Beiping for the nationalist government, while also opening up the roads completely for our cavalry to exploit. Deciding to focus on cutting north, 2 of our divisions rushed down Menjiang, meeting no resistance as we re-established the People's Menjiang government, defeating the Japanese puppet regime. Leading to the encirclement of 8 Japanese divisions, some of which are really expensive. The operation has been a huge success. But it isn't completely over yet, as the offensive to the south only got stopped after a naval invasion of East Hebei, forcing us to revert troops to it. While it looked dangerous for some time, with the Japanese overstretching themselves, it wasn't difficult to encircle and destroy them all. We are now closing in on 1 year of independence, and the war so far has been a massive success. The Imperial Japanese Army only has between 40 and 90 divisions left, as their total casualties have reached over 1 million men. With Manchuria also safe from an invasion as the forces in the north have been defeated, what remains to do is to kick the Japanese out of China and firmly end the Second Sino-Japanese War. 英勇的战士端着枪，英勇的战士端着枪，个个向前扛，雄赳赳，气昂昂，龙腾虎跃向前冲，龙腾虎跃向前冲，向前冲，怒
枪，英勇的战士端着枪，个个向前高，雄赳赳，气昂昂，龙腾。
The war has been won and we were the deciding factor. With 500,000 casualties inflicted on the Imperial Army, it very well could be smaller than ours. And being completely kicked out of mainland Asia, we've reached agreements of white peace between us, the Chinese United Front and Japan. While the nationalist government in Nanjing has taken control of all Japanese territories in China, we have been given ownership of Korea, establishing a puppet regime with far more lenient control than the Japanese had. So, with peace and independence having arrived, we can now for the first time look inwards. Throughout all this, Puyi has stayed as a figurehead, but with plans of democracy, it is time to depose him, ridding ourselves of his poor legitimacy and instead looking to declare a counter-government to the nationalists in Nanjing. However, as the bandits disbanded and the uniting nature of war disappeared, a power vacuum would open, with only one group able to fill its void. The Northeast Anti-Japanese United Army, who had played an important part in our independence war, would seize control in a coup, establishing a communist regime under the same Communist Party of China as in Yan'an, but under the group's leader Zhao Shangzi. The People's Mengjiang was also integrated at the same time. While some of the old bandit leaders only sought an independent Manchuria, our new government's focus is clear: to bring the revolution to the rest of China and crush the government of Chiang Kai-shek, which continues to mismanage the nation. Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai obviously have the same objective, so we reached out to them and created a popular front against the Kuomintang. And so began the long preparations for the civil war. We've already begun creating our People's Liberation Army, upgrading all our cavalry divisions and beginning to train even more. While our industry is the second biggest in China, we still lack a lot of equipment for all this expansion. Thankfully, we have an ally outside of China, the Soviet Union. While they are currently fighting the Axis in Europe, with us having defeated the Japanese threat for them, some of their Far Eastern garrisons would reinforce us with their equipment and knowledge. Forming strong relations with the Union, we signed the Non-Aggression Pact and started even more military cooperation with them. As time went on, we slowly started running out of men to recruit, having to expand conscription. Something we can lower back down once China is united. Then, on the New Year's Eve of 1942, the preparations were finished. Not because we are ready, but because Mao has declared the One China policy and restarted the civil war, launching an uprising south of Yan'an. We were obviously forced to join, despite still having 250,000 not ready at all. But while the Kuomintang has the larger army, especially factoring in all the warlords, we are at least more ready for this immediate war, as they are actively training on our border and have left a big gap on the front. This allowed our forces to ride down to the Yellow Sea, encircling 10 or more divisions in East Hebei, while at the same time securing Tianjin and Beiping, allowing us to cross the Yongding River. After crushing the encircled divisions in the east and organizing our front line, we are ready to continue the same way we had gone while crushing Japan. Looking to the Maoist front, our allies are mostly being beaten back, especially by the large warlord armies in the north. Though with the terrain defensible, we don't fear their collapse, instead using them as a perfect distraction while we go on the offensive. But our allies all the way in Xinjiang would not serve as such a distraction, becoming traitors instead. Back to our front, we concentrated our forces to all break through simultaneously, with the goal of capturing the two supply hubs of Yinan and Ximen. For the first, we had to cross the Yellow River, something we managed to do without resistance, thanks to our quick breakthrough, which also allowed us to encircle some lonely garrisons and continue even further than planned. The Shandong Peninsula was fully enveloped, and as the southern thrust got stopped, we moved on with capturing it. All the while, a more difficult battle for Ximen had taken place, but with the supply hub captured, over 25 nationalist divisions are suffering from supply issues in the north. While waiting for them to starve, we restarted our offensive to the south. With the usual quick breakthrough, it grew into a far more substantial offensive than expected. As no defense in depth halted our advance, we could pursue the frontline units to encircle them, pushing so far as to reach the outskirts of Nanjing. And with the city open for taking, we capitalized, securing the capital of the nationalist government while also continuing to Shanghai, defeating 2 divisions in the process. In the meantime, we had lost to our first counterattack, with Xi men falling back into nationalist hands. But assembling a counterattacking force, we advanced from the south of the supply hub, cutting off its railway access to then recapture it and re-starve the northern forces. Looking to Mao, his forces are being more and more beaten back. While we have already put the KMT at 50%, we need to hurry up further before our ally collapses, especially considering the hard part of inner China remains. And once again, Chiang Kai-shek's southern defenses came in clutch. After less than a year since the civil war restarted, we've kicked the Kuomintang out of mainland China as their leadership has retreated to the island of Taiwan. Being unable to affect them with our navy of 0 ships, a fragile de facto peace has set in. But this is an issue for the future. For now, with the main capitals of China under our control, the time has come to proclaim the formation of the People's Republic of China. Uniting the 2 branches of the Communist Party, Zhao Xiangzi would become chairman of the PRC and later elected as the chairman of the Communist Party as well, with Mao Zedong deposed to vice chairman. And so a new era for China would begin. United for the first time since the Qing Empire, our economy can begin to recover from the decades of destruction and exploitation, with our communist rule ending the corruption and illicit trades that destroyed our population. While there is an infinite amount of things to talk about regarding our internal politics and economics, during this transition to a great power once again, we ourselves will put our focus on external politics. One of the main reasons for the collapse of our Chinese greatness was all the treaties imposed on our lands by the Westerners. This ends now as we break them up and retake our own land for ourselves. In accordance with the One China policy, we prepared for an ultimatum about the foreign port cities in the south, while simultaneously invading Tibet. The region plays an important role for our relations with India, so securing it allows us to protect the southern flank. There also remains the second southern flank in Indochina, occupied by Vichy France, with their alliance folding over in Europe and the Free French forces only hours of marching away from Vichy itself. We will declare war on the Axis alliance and join the war on the sides of the Allies and the Comintern. Crossing the border, we met no resistance at first, though we would soon find ourselves fighting an army. Not the French, but the Thai, who had felt threatened by our presence, rightfully so. Ignoring them for a start, we captured all of Indochina, with the people meeting us as liberators. Then, to deal with Siam, we moved from Cambodia to capture Bangkok, from which point on their defenses collapsed. Going all the way south to Malaysia first, then defeating their million-man army up in the north with a massive encirclement. With this success, we put into action our ultimatums to France, Portugal and the UK. After long negotiations, the territories were transferred back to their motherland. and as a thanks we sent some forces over to Europe, not for vacation but to help defeat the last bits of Axis resistance. It would be us who did the final job, clearing Sicily to destroy the last stronghold of Italian fascism. And so a new world order begins. In the east, communism reigns supreme, with relations between us and the Soviet flourishing, while in the west the democracies of the USA, UK and France continue their imperialism, but at a much weaker state. And at the end of the century, everyone will recognize that the 1900s had been the century of workers' liberation. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one.